Good morning, everyone. It is me, Dr. Pamela Grayson, here to tell you about the amazing information that you are going to receive today. Now, first of all, I need to explain the young man that's going to come before you today is extremely knowledgeable. He's done the work. He knows the history. He knows what he's speaking of. But it is more so impressive as to how I met him and the history that is him. I met Maham the Mentor when we were doing an event for the community with Original Good Apparel, the citywide march that happened on June 4th. And this was a march against gun violence in our neighborhoods. And Maham led the North Dallas location of this march. And he's amazing. The first time I met him, he's very tall. And so I'm looking up at him and all this knowledge that he's espousing. The thing is that Maham and the other individuals that put together that march have a history of incarceration. And the most impressive thing about all of them is the fact that they take responsibility for that history. They don't run around saying, I didn't do it. No, if somebody railroaded me, no, I did it. It's a part of their history. It was a part of their growth. It was a part of their development. It was a part of their experiences. And how they've overcome those experiences is amazing. While I sit here, I have multiple degrees. One of them being the highest degree to be earned, a terminal degree, the doctorate degree. My formal education, to me, is superseded by the amazing experiences that they've had and the experiences and the development that they've learned. And so today, we are going to hear from one of them, the amazing Maham the Mentor. So I want to give you an idea of who he is. So you all chill with me and we're going to watch the quick video here.
Quote, this is from the editorial. Every Negro lynched is called a big, burly, black brute, when in fact many of those who have thus been dealt with had white men for their fathers, and were not only black and burly, but were sufficiently attractive for white girls of culture and refinement to fall in love with them, as is very well known to all. Let virtue be something more than an excuse for them to intimidate and torture a helpless people. Tell your men that it is no worse for a black man to be intimate with a white woman than for a white man to be intimate with a colored woman. You set yourselves down as a lot of carping hypocrites in that you cry aloud for the virtue of your women while you seek to destroy the morality of ours. Now, as you can imagine, this did not go over very well with the white supremacist leadership. And in fact, the article was reprinted not only in North Carolina, but across the South. And there was a bidding war for a while because everybody wanted to get their hands on it. So actually, Manley made a little bit of money because he kept reprinting it. But after it appeared, the vigilantes, the white vigilante militia of the supremacy movement were called red shirts. They wanted to lynch Manley that day. And to show you how calculated and premeditated this coup was, the leaders of the coup said, no, not now. This will have much greater political impact several months later in November. This was in August. They said, we're going to wait till the November elections, and then we can really use this. And I promise you guys, you can not only lynch Manley, but you can burn down the newspaper. And they did. They didn't lynch Manley. He escaped. He got warnings. He escaped 2 days before the election. And in fact, it was interesting. A white neighbor of his knew that he was going to be lynched, warned him, gave him $25 in gold, and gave him the password that you needed to get through the white sentinels. The whites had militarized Wilmington. And they set up checkpoints all around the city, and they organized it on a block-by-block basis. But with the password, he got through and escaped to Philadelphia, as a matter of fact. He lived 40 years in Philadelphia after that.
All right.
11 the walnut.
One of the things that is chilling, but in a very odd way, kind of refreshing, is the complete lack of euphemism. I mean, there are no apologies for the pure racism pure white supremacy. I know you talk about Waddell's
Yes.
speech. You want to give
Yeah,
us
let me tell you, he was Colonel Alfred Moore Waddell was one of the leaders in Wilmington of the coup and the massacre. He was a former Confederate colonel. He had been a congressman, a U.S. congressman. He had run a newspaper, and he was this fabulous orator. And during the summer, spring, and fall of 1898, he traveled through the Cape Fear countryside, giving these race-baiting speeches, inciting white men to attack blacks to prevent them from voting. The night before the election, he gave an absolutely chilling speech. And Mark's right, the N-word appeared in print constantly. It was in all the newspapers. It was used commonly. I was just shocked. That was one of the things that shocked me about the research of this book, that how open and nakedly racist these people were, and how proudly racist they were. So again, this is the speech to about 1,000 red shirts and other vigilantes downtown Wilmington the night before the election. And again, this is Alfred Moore Waddell. What page, Mark?
161.
Thank you. I knew I would lose it.
I memorized this.
Yeah, okay. That's impressive. Again, this is from his speech to a bunch of whooping red shirts. Quote, "Men, the crisis is upon us. You must do your duty. This city, county, and state shall be rid of Negro domination once and forever. You have the courage. You're brave. You are the sons of noble ancestry. You are Anglo-Saxons. You are armed and prepared, and you will do your duty. Go to the polls tomorrow, and if you find the Negro out voting, tell him to leave the polls. And if he refuses, kill him. Shoot him down in his tracks."
So one of the things, Dave, that really struck me as I read your book was that it's such an astonishing episode from American history.
Right.
And I was never taught this. I didn't know anything about this. So, and you grew up in North Carolina. Why didn't we know about this?
Basically, the white supremacists, on the one hand, they boasted about it. They were proud of it. They wrote about it in memoirs and in letters to each other and newspaper articles. But at the same time, they created the lie that's in the title. And the lie was two things. One, that blacks were planning a riot for the election. And they told everyone that. They printed it in the papers. And they said they were going to rise up and take over the town. And a lot of whites believed their own propaganda. A lot of whites sent their families out of Wilmington for the election because they were afraid of this black riot. The other myth was that they propagated in the newspapers was that blacks were not intelligent. They were certainly not intelligent enough to vote, and certainly not intelligent enough to run and hold public office and to make important decisions. They said they were venal, corrupt, and the reason they had to rise up and take over was because this corrupt administration on what they called Negro rule. And when I went to high school and college in North Carolina, not once did any teacher or professor mention this event. It wasn't in the history books. When I was a freshman at UNC in Chapel Hill, the dorm I was assigned to was Morrison Dorm. And I didn't know who Morrison was. Somebody said he was a governor. I didn't care who he was. Years later, I find out he's a character in my book. He was one of the speakers on the white supremacy campaign during that summer, who rode through the countryside giving these race-baiting speeches, inciting whites to go out and attack blacks. And in fact, he was one of 3 speakers who became governor of North Carolina, in large parts due to the fame that they won during this white supremacy campaign. When I was at school, I went to football games at a stadium called Kenan Stadium. You may have seen it on TV. I had no idea who Kenan was, and again, I didn't care. Years later, I'm researching this book. Again, he's a character in the book. He was William Buck Rand Kenan. He was the head of one of the gun squads that rode through the town killing black men. So I bring this up only to make the point that this really is an ancient history. It's right now. It's the legacy is today. There are almost 30 buildings on the campus of the University of North Carolina named for white supremacists, and many of them were white supremacists involved in this campaign. So I didn't know it, but this book has been following me around for most of my adult life because I didn't know about this until about 20 years ago.
So tell us how you found out about it, and when and why did you decide to write a book about it?
I found out about it in 1998. because the University of North Carolina at Wilmington held some centennial events, and they tried very hard to bring blacks and whites together after 100 years and try to come up with some sort of reconciliation, but they also wanted to burrow down and tell the real story. They wanted to end the lie and the myth that had been going for a century. And they brought blacks and whites together, and particularly the descendants on both sides. And they held meetings, and it worked fairly well. They brought people together. They got a memorial put up in memory of the victims, and they rewrote the state historical marker, which had called it a race riot, when in fact it was a racial coup and a massacre. They changed that. But there was one issue that sort of split the town again, and that was reparations. Because it came up, and many members of the white community just adamantly refused to have any part of it, and it's still splitting the community. I gave a talk there a couple of weeks ago, and it was sponsored by the NAACP, and I was anticipating there would be some whites there who would jump up and say, "Why are you dredging up this ancient history? Just let it be." But no, it did not happen. But reparations was the main topic, or one of the main topics of discussion during that book talk.
So did you cover this for some reason? What brought this to your attention and made you decide to write about it?
Again, in 1998, I read newspaper stories about this centennial, and I could not believe it. Like, how did I not know about this? And how could this happen in the United States of America? So I just said, I've got to write a book about it. There had been one academic book written about it in 1984, but it didn't get a whole lot of attention. So I really just wanted to basically correct the historical record and bring this story to the country. And when I go to other parts of the country, no one has ever heard of this. Very, very few people. So that's why I decided to do it. And I just had to wait. I mean, I have a real job writing for newspapers, and I just never had time. And I finally got the time and decided to sit down and do it. And it took about 3 years. And obviously, as you know, it's all on paper. There was nobody to interview. And I'm used to interviewing people live or witnessing events myself. And this was a different experience for me. Everything in here comes from a piece of paper, from a document, which is why it took so long.
And I should
So you all got to see that. That individual is one who has done the research on that particular massacre and opted to put the narrative out there correctly. And per Mayhem, that is one of the best individuals that spoke on that. And that young man's name is David Zucchino. And his video is entitled Wilmington's Lie, the Murderous Coup of 1898 and the Rise of White Supremacy. One thing I really want you all to take note of there is the issue was taking the Black person's voting rights. It's important. They know it's important. I need for us to know it's important. But let me tell you a little bit more about Mayhem. Maham the Mentor is a person who transformed himself from a lost soul, from an out of control person into a fully controlled person. Maham the Mentor has overcome a tremendous amount of adversity, which has prepared him to accomplish his goal at stopping mass incarceration of all people, but namely young Black and brown men. He focused on intellectual property that can help young men evolve into manhood. Maham the Mentor is a principle-driven man. That's a principles over power man, and acknowledges that he is a servant leader who has chosen to serve those who he has the passion to lead. A unique story based on the life of a young Black man who rose through the streets of America. Born in Los Angeles, lived in Albuquerque, Fresno, Memphis, Colorado Springs, but spent most of his life in North, and he told me that, North Dallas. He's the founder of the Society of Is Real. It's a youth mentorship program. He's also an author. He has a series of books on Black American history. His books are called Black Massacres and Black excellence. So I am going to present to some and introduce to others the incomparable and outstanding Mayhem the Mentor.
Good evening. How you doing? How's everybody doing? Thank you for having me on the show, on the podcast. Are we ready to talk about this collaboration?
We are. You are going to, again, to be clear now, for those of you watching, you can type questions into the comments and we can see them. And they can be brought on screen and answered real time. So please, any questions, any comments, please go ahead and put them into the comments section. Yes, number 2, let's discuss what we're going to talk about today. It's called the correlation. Mayhem is going to correlate today the Wilmington Massacre that was just discussed in the previous video of 1898 with what happened January 6th, 2021.
Well-organized crimes.
1898, 2021, you have a difference of 103 years, but the same sentiment and actions are occurring. And again, keep in mind, voting rights.
Right. So I was trying to have a conversation with one of my good friends, my mentor, my OG, Lorenzo Gray. You know what I'm saying? And I was explaining to him why January 6th is important. And he was like, I don't really care. You know, most of us really don't think that, you know, they don't see the significance in it. They don't see the correlation in it. So I had to kind of explain to him. But when I thought to him, I'm like, I need to explain this to most people who might not realize what's at stake, what's really going on, and why and how it can even happen. And that it's not the first time that this has happened, right? And we're talking about mass manipulation on the highest scale of all through attacking uneducated, naive people, namely the Southern people. So when I was doing my book called Black Massacres, was highlighted all these Black massacres, which are events that 1 or 2 people attacked Black people and killed them or ran them out of town. During the due diligence and my research on writing this book, I realized and came to the conclusion that the majority of these Black massacres was direct link to voting suppression, which means these Black massacres had they were trying to stop Black people from voting, voter suppression, aka voter suppression. So Wilmington, North Carolina, separates itself from all other Black massacres, not to be confused with a race riot difference. A massacre that happened in Wilmington was not only a massacre, but a successful coup d'etat, which means overthrow of the federal government. So in November 10th, 1898, in Wilmington, North Carolina, white supremacist terrorist group overthrew a multicultural, illegally elected government administration. And they got away with it through lies. The same lies that you are seeing spread today with January 6th. You know, and it's not just lies, it's intentional lies. And these lies did not start on that date. So when I was researching this riot in Wilmington, what I found out that this riot really was supposed to start, this riot didn't start on November the 10th. It started in September. And the riot was a power grab for white supremacist groups, because in 1898 in Wilmington, North Carolina, it at this time had the number 1 rank for the most Black people congregated in a major city. Wilmington, North Carolina was 50% Black, 56% Black. It was majority of Black ruled in North Carolina in 1898, right? Not only did they have that many people, but we had Black people in the government. I'm going to run down some numbers so you can understand. In Wilmington, North Carolina, we had, let me see, We had a multiracial government. They had the most powerful black people in power. 10 out of the 26 police officers were black. We had black judges, we had black lawyers, and we had black doctors. They had a black treasurer. They had black jailers. They had a black coroner. They had a black superintendent. I mean, there were so many things that black people held in this Wilmington, North Carolina, and this outraged the white supremacy at this group. The white supremacy groups at this time was not the Ku Klux Klan. It was the Redcoats, which was an offspring of a Ku Klux Klan. These founders and leaders of the Redcoats were a white supremacist group, but the leaders went on to become politicians. They became governors, state senators, judges. The people who participated in the massacres were not only politicians, but they were preachers who preached the word of Jesus Christ. They participated in this black massacre. Not just preaching, but they was on the streets with rifles, documented. Amen. And I'm saying that to say this here. You got a lot of preachers that back another president candidate because, hey, amen, amen. They've been here. We got evil people who pretend to be preachers. They were present in Wilmington, North Carolina. And not only did we have the white preachers, we had black preachers who went out there and told the black people, we are better suited with these type of people in control. So we got black people today that you say, how can you say what you're saying? Hey, man, we had people back in the day who supported the Confederacy, who supported the Wilmington riots, who came out there and told other black people we're better off letting them do what they're doing. So I want to say, because I'm telling you, some people just get confused or they just don't understand what's going on and why are you so upset. So if you see what's going on today in 2022, you're seeing tremendous moves of the Republican Party making a big significance at voter suppression. Still in North Carolina. Can you believe this? In North Carolina, right where this riot is at, they are still doing mannerism. They are still isolating black people to this day. Republicans doing this now. If you look at the Wilmington riots, you will see that it has a direct link to the Democratic Party. If you look at the red shirts or the Ku Klux Klan, if you look up the Ku Klux Klan, if you look up affiliates, you'll see the Democratic Party, the Democrats, the Dixie Democrats. But that's so wonderful because even now you got black people who still say, I'm going to be a Republican because Republicans were the party of Lincoln. And the Democrats were responsible for all of these massacres. They were, and they know that. But a lot of us black people, we don't do enough research to realize that they had a senator out of North Carolina named Jesse Holmes who flipped the Dixie Democrats into the Republicans. It happened in 1974. 1974. That's why Martin Luther King, who died in the 60s, was still a Republican because Republicans were the party of the poor. Now, another thing that is important that we talk about is this is where we talk about the fusion. And this is where they had poor whites and black people coming together. They call that the fusion. And that is what outraged the Dixie Democrats because when the fusion took place, this is what gave the black people and the Republican Party power because the power was in the votes. Now, after this massacre, didn't nothing happen because the president knew about it, but he said, black people are not going to vote now, so why should I help them? And true, black people were not going to vote because the Democrats were killing you. Physically killing you. They were at the polls with guns. And if you went and they didn't catch you at the poll, they'd catch you at your house. They was doing that to stop you from voting. And now it's almost understood that we don't vote. But now you understand why black people don't vote and why you got black people out here saying that your vote don't count. These are the people who out there preaching saying white people are better off in charge. We have no place in our politics. That's not our role. Our role is just a word. Be careful of these black people. These black people are lost.
And
these black people are not educated. These black people are YouTubers.
So a couple of things I want to bring out to your points. Number one, we discussed the fusion. And the fusion is something that should have benefited us, which is, again, the coming together of poor whites and poor blacks. You spoke
It
of
did benefit.
pastors, the use of religion to propagate white supremacy.
No, the biggest use of all was newspapers. That was the Twitter. That was social media at that time. It was the newspapers. And I want to speak about that. The newspapers and the preachers is what they used to manipulate the masses of people into embracing the lies. They're saying that black people were going to rise up on November the 10th. Black people were going to do this. Black people were going to do this. They promoted that through propaganda, the newspapers in North Carolina, and through the preachers. Let me make that point. That's how they let the scheme go out, through newspapers and preachers. It was no social media or radio at this time.
No, but what I was saying was the use of religion overall.
Yes.
In which it has been done for years. Now I'm speaking as a pastor's daughter. Yes, religion was used to perpetuate white supremacy, genderism, sexism, homophobia. Religion, even amongst black people, has been used to perpetuate hate. And some of us follow it religiously.
Yes, absolutely. And they did do that.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have any questions?
Not at this time. If they come up, I'm going to post, but again, please type any questions you have in the comments and I'll see them and I can bring them on the screen. So you've gone over what was the actual gist or purpose or cause of the Wilmington Massacre of 1898.
Go ahead.
How does that correlate to January 6th?
January 6th was a calculated attack. It did not happen on January 6th. It was premeditated like Wilmington, which means that Donald Trump was doing everything in his power to stay the president. January 6th was the climax. January 6th was the last straw. Again, these correlations is it was all lies. After President Trump lost the election and he knew that he lost it, he started spreading lies through propaganda. He started making up things that were not true. He says a lot of things that were direct linked to Wilmington, North Carolina, which is one thing I did want to say. The bullet or the ballot did not come from Malcolm X. It came from this Wilmington riot. The bullet or the ballot did not come from Malcolm X's speech. That's not where the first time that word came up. No, sir. No, ma'am. No, it came up in Wilmington, North Carolina. And this was the chant of white people, bullet or the ballot. And they killed black people. It wasn't Malcolm X's thought to write this speech about the bullet or the ballot. No, it happened in 1898 in November 10th. White people chanted bullet or ballot, and they meant that. The same thing as Trump is with this fight, bullet or a ballot. We need to fight with all this lies, and again, lying and know that you're lying, right? Because the people in Wilmington, North Carolina were out there spraying, black people vote don't count. They're illegitimate. It's all voter fraud. We need to get the black people, the black votes don't count. We are the legitimate winners. We are the legitimate winners. They did not want to accept the multicultural. They did not want to accept black people in powerful positions. This is what happened. And they lied and got away with it, just like Trump is lying and getting away with it. These people who ran into the Capitol on January 6th committed treason and they committed murder, would be capital murder, because people died in that. Now, that was all premeditated and organized and ran through by Donald Trump. Donald Trump was the main instigator and organizer of the entire thing. He knew everything he did and continued to do it. And nobody in the White House is going to hold him accountable because they are listening to his lies that he started. So it's all like, I'm going to start to lie and use this lie and then blame my mental health and say, well, I didn't know. Yes, you did know. Everybody told you. Everybody told you. Everybody told him the truth, and he still promoted the lie. He still ran with the lie. And because of that, and because of his drivenness and stubbornness, he's fixing to get away with January 6th, just like they got away with Wilmington.
Now, I got a question. Do you think that the reason that he potentially is getting away is that the White House is listening to his lies, or is it more of the White House is in a state of self-preservation?
It is that the administration is always so corrupted. It's so corrupted. They do not want to put out mass arrests and mass charges of white people. But if this was black people, you would see the most biggest mass arrests of black people of all time. If this was black people that ran upon the Capitol, you would see the full exercise of America's judicial system. Because these are white people, and we have so much white supremacy that's been foundation. Black people are the heartbeat of America, and white supremacy has always been here, breathing and existing, and they still here. And so many people in our administration behind closed doors bathe in white supremacy. That's why it's hard for them to hold their people accountable. Just like it's hard for pro-black people to hold black people who do something crazy accountable. Same thing. That's why you got to stand firm on principles. If you're right is right, wrong is wrong. Doesn't matter who you are, what color you are. These people know that they're lying, and they're continuing to do it. Now, white supremacy is in the White House, and there's so many of these people that's sitting on their hands. They don't want to charge it. They don't want to push the issue because they don't want to offend anybody. Is that right? You know what I'm saying? Does that because you don't want to hurt people's feelings, or you don't want to inconvenience somebody's time? But these people broke the law. This is not a civil case. This is a criminal case. This is a crime. Laws were broken, and they're trying to act like this is a civil matter. This is not a civil. But again, because it happened in Washington, D.C., everything in Washington, D.C. is federal. I don't know if most people know that or not. Any crime committed in Washington, D.C. is federal. They have no state crimes in the District of Columbia. Anything that's done in the White House is federal. So I don't understand. This man should be up underneath the jail. And what's crazy is you got so many Americans that still believe in Donald Trump. They still think he's you got a lot of black people that still talking about, look at the gas prices, look at this. And they're oblivious to reality. And I'm talking about, to me, it's sickening and disappointing to see so many people still looking at Trump saying it was, I don't get it.
I would contribute it back to that news media you talked about promoting ignorance, and some of us so easily to accept it. The looking at Trump and the things he's done and gotten away with, it just confirms the statement. It is better to be rich and guilty in America than to be poor and innocent.
Right. And Donald Trump is the epitome of white people in America, which means is every white person wants to be born filthy rich and get richer. You feel me? But one of the sad parts about Donald Trump is most people cannot identify or relate to him and understand how his thinking is. And what I come to the conclusion is because I do some type of help with dope fiends, right? Crack addicts, right? People who do drugs have to have money because drugs cost money. So they were filthy rich growing up. Donald Trump filthy rich, right? Because Donald Trump didn't get filthy, he became filthy rich. But what I mean by that is, talking to this guy, I got to realize that when you grow up very rich, very wealthy, you will never really truly find somebody as genuine, as a good friend, because everybody in your life is going to come to you for a purpose. They want what you got because you got an abundance of it. So most people are coming to you with manipulation, trickery. They don't like you because you're Trump. They like you because you got money. So Trump, this is what I'm trying to come up with. This is mentality. Because he's so filthy rich, he had to come up with a scheme, a protection way, some way to protect himself from these vultures who come to get his money. And what he discovered, his solution was this, is that I'm going to have a terrible character. So I'll find out only people who hang around me want the money. And those people, I'm going to manipulate them. Good people won't hang around me. I don't need anybody. So anybody who comes to me, I'm going to use them like they're going to use me. And I'm going to know that if they're worthy of being used, because I'm going to act like a POS. And if they still hang around me, then bing, I know that they mean me no good. They're only here for the money. So I'm going to use them before they use me. This is the mentality that not Trump. Most people who grow up super rich and they don't know any better. Nobody ever taught them, look, man, stop telling everybody what you got. It doesn't matter. You want people to manipulate. You want people to look like you, come to you for your money so you can get them. Gotcha. I got you. And that's a Trump. And these people developed this over life, because I don't see there was a time in life where Trump wasn't conniving. And I accidentally know about Trump because I am a lifer on entrepreneur. I looked up a lot of entrepreneur books. I read a lot of entrepreneur stuff. So on accident, Trump has these books. I'm reading them because they said he was whatever. And I'm reading them, and you can read through literature, a lot of books on Trump. He has always been a con artist. He's always been a slime. He's always did terrible things way before he became the president. That's why you'll see numerous people just outraged. Trump's family members will tell you, I don't even understand what people see. But hey, oh well. And so again, the only thing that white people vote for is he's a white man with money. He's always had money. And this is like, it's pride for them. It's their ego. So it's like, we don't want the country. This Wilmington riot was, we don't want the fusion government, which is the Democrats, black, Obama, Trump, the black people. They don't look at Democrats. It's black and white. Black, white. It's just like, we want to get with the white. We want white people. We feel better. We feel comfortable. We want somebody white. I don't care how lunatic he is. Anybody but a white woman or a black man, or the fusion. We don't want, because again, these riots were not, these massacres, there were a lot of, in Wilmington, there were a lot of white people who died as well, trying to protect black people or trying to go be a Republican. This was not an attack on just all black people. No, this was an attack on Republicans. I want to say that too. And this was straight up driven by politics, which is, again, the old Dixie Democrats is also the new Republican. I'm tired of people acting like they don't know this. It's so many black people who still claiming on to the Republican Party, thinking it's the party of Lincoln. It is not. It has been flipped. And it got flipped in 1974 by Jesse Helms. I want to live a link to that, to educate black people who keep on talking about the Republican Party like they don't know about Jesse Helms. So again, these correlations are, and we as black people, it's a direct attack. Voter suppression is real. These massacres, people were killed. And again, the reason why they get away with these tactics is because black people don't vote. So what is the big deal for a politician or a president to do something? This is what was also talked about after Wilmington. The president said, why should I do something? They're not going to vote anymore. Well, they're not voting because they're terrorized. If they do try to vote, they're killed. And if you're not going to protect them, why do you think they're going to vote for you? So he was like, well, I'm not going to protect them, so I'm not going to even worry about their vote anymore. And this is what's been happening. So the last, 100 years? We got a big black cast in this. We don't vote. Black people really don't vote. And even to now, I'm going to say 5 out of 10 black people would probably tell you that your vote don't count.
And this is true. I sit as a voting, I'm the precinct chair for 3 precincts in South Dallas. We get killed. We have a seat that was originally designed for the city council for someone that looked like us, but it's not one that looks like us that sits in that seat. And we're going to go back to what you said about preachers that basically participated in the coonery. You have black people today that participate in the coonery. Yeah. The right candidate comes in and says, I'm going to do this and this, and they don't care how it may hurt the rest of us. But they'll run with that candidate because that candidate accommodated them. It's the coonery that's killing us, the lack of voting. I would love to force everyone, when you turn 18, become of age to vote, you will sit down and you will watch Ava DuVernay's accurate, vivid portrayal of the civil rights fights that we incurred just for the right to vote. And people don't get it and they don't appreciate it. And I've walked the streets here, right here where I live in Dixon Circle, and people tell me, I don't vote. I only vote when it's the president. Oh, no, I don't matter. The local elections don't mean anything. Well, then don't come to me when then there's an issue with your trash, the streets, too many people parking over here that don't live here. You're talking about all the shooting going on. Then don't come to me because, again, remember, it wasn't important enough for you to address it at the ballot box. So stay out of Dr. Grayson's inbox.
How much money your child gets on lunch? What kind of meal your child gets? How much your child gets in school? You know, these things are made by politicians. The vote counts all the way. I mean, and again, I'm guilty. I am guilty of not voting, of not knowing. I'm stupid. I can say that. See, now I can say that as a special ed thug, gangbanger, just coming from the streets, I didn't care. I didn't know. I had no idea of, what was at stake and why I should be, because and how much effect it has on me and the people I claimed and love. You know what I'm saying? Because even though I don't go to school no more, or even though I might not do a lot of things, I would rather have the people in the right positions that care about our people and are not gonna, like I say, scapegoat away. And that is what I've seen. I mean, I was talking to Dallas is one of the most, we have a very controversial, environment in Dallas. Dallas is one of the most racist cities in America, and a lot of us live here and don't even know it. Like, what are you talking about? I'm like, man, if you look up redlining in this city, and most people don't even understand that, with what they're raising. See, and I'm gonna tell you, here's something else. Redlining is this. We got historical Black territories or areas in Dallas that have been redlined. Now, the city of Dallas is going into these areas, and they are unjustly raising their property taxes up so high just so they can get a default on the property loan, so they can evict the people out of the house and turn the house into regentrification. This is something that Black people, when you talk about this, it's like wonk, 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 wonk. Who cares? Who cares? This is first of all, they never gave them the correct property value on their house, never, when it was time to benefit them. But now that it doesn't benefit them, these are older Black people who cannot probably pay nothing. They barely surviving right now as it is. And now you're coming over there taking something that their house been paid off for probably 25, 30 years. And now you're coming over here driving their tag. Your house is worth $400,000. This is a shotgun house. This house ain't worth nothing. Well, the property that it sits in is prime location. And this is how they BS our ancestors out of their property in 2022. But if they can't, I guess if somebody's not coming to them with the gun, they can't see. It's like, I don't see the gun. They're robbing our people, and they're doing it intellectually. They're doing it through politics.
You are absolutely right. And the excuse given for the property valuations, well, you got so many people moving here from New York and California, is creating bidding wars, and so that drove up property values. I don't know.
Also, the location. They said the location from downtown Dallas is also a big thing. Where you're in a prime location.
And I'm over here in Dixon Circle, and that's where they're pulling it. I've got one property over here. Her properties evaluated 5 times higher this year, and most of them didn't even have infrastructure on them. That's the excuse being given. They want us out of here, but I intend to not go with a fight. Now you're sitting here. We're saying this. The lack of voting, the lack of creating wills, that's killing us. I'm working with 2 families now. The parents owned the home and passed away. The kids stayed in it. You never got it in your own name. And so now you're having an issue.
Right. That's all great things. Now, the last correlation between Wilmington and January 6th, these events were led and overseen by politicians, not people. These were political moves. All right, they're political. They were not personal. January 6th was a political move. Wilmington Massacre was a political move and a power grab. That's the correlations. That is the thing. And this is white supremacy grabbing power. This isn't anybody. This is white supremacy using politics to grab power, to manipulate other people. And let me tell you, because you were talking about white people and Black people working together. The fusion was created. The reason why the fusion was created is because poor white people saw that the Dixie Democrats didn't care about the poor people. They only cared about the rich and the powerful. The Democrats only cared about the rich and powerful. This is how the fusion started. If you don't know what me and Dr. Pamela Grayson are talking about, look up the Great Fusion. This is when poor Black people and white people came together. They called it the Great Fusion. And the reason why they fused so well is because they were both treated terrible by white supremacy. They don't care about you if you're poor. This is real. Just like the Republican Party is all about the party of rich and tax benefits and all that. This is what the Democrats, back in the day. So many people always love to tell me about I run across so many black people. The Republican Party freed slaves. They say this to me all the time, and it's so frustrated for me, because I'm saying you guys will take something so old and you will study that. That's telling me when you tell me that the Republican Party, and you say that and you say that trying to promote Republicans, you say that in 2022, any black person who's out here talking about the Republican Party is the party who freed the slaves, bro, you guys are in last place, because true, you're not telling a lie, you're being manipulative, because you're not telling the whole story. You're not saying the Republican Party is the party that freed the slaves and got slaughtered by the Democrats, and then the Democrats took over the Republican Party, and now they're the Republicans. You don't finish that. You just say the Republican freed the slaves, and then you stop. You need to finish the whole story. You need to say the Republicans did this, and in 1974, these Democrats flipped over to the Republicans. These racist Democrats, these Dixiecrats, these Democrats, they were huge. They were all over. These same Dixie Democrats are now in 2022 considered the Republican Party. And we're talking about principles. Look at the principles of the Democratic Party back then. Don't tell me about who did what. Look at their principles. Look at the Democrats in this time, and look at the Republican principles. They're the same. Not Jesse Helms did that. Jesse Helms, 1974. Let me know. Let me know. Help me up. If I'm wrong, let me know.
Okay, I want to make a couple of points here. Things that you said. Number one, the fusion. We're going to go back to that. The black people and the white people were both socioeconomically challenged. They were poor, and they came together. And I don't think poor white people get it today. They think because they're white, they're still superior to poor blacks. You're poor. Don't nobody care about you, period, between Democrats or Republicans. Now let's go to that. You're talking about it was a flipping of parties. Neither one of these parties, to me, have sufficiently taken care of black people. Now, I serve as a Democratic precinct chair. I'm going to the convention here in a few weeks, and I'm a delegate at the convention. But that party, and specifically your current Democratic presidential administration, has failed us. And you'll get those of us up in there running around, we're this, we're that, and so hard for the Democratic Party. And yet, Asians gotta hate law. Somebody's been being mean to them for the past 3 to 5 years. Black people, 400 years. What do we have? Asians got reparations. My ancestors that were enslaved built your White House.
Can I have a rebuttal on that?
You got a rebuttal.
No, not a rebuttal, but I want to add on to what you're saying.
Okay.
A lot of people, here's why, because like you said, you make so many good points. The Democratic Party has failed us, but the Democratic Party has also failed the South, just like the Republican Party failed the South. The Republican Party did not protect the people who voted for them in the South. That was real. The Democratic people, the Democratic people in Washington, D.C. or in the East or in the West has to understand that racism is real in the South. Y'all gotta stop denying it. You gotta act like, oh, well, y'all ain't voting over there. First of all, nobody that's Democrat comes into the South and helps the South vote in Republicans. In the Republican area. I don't know about people. I'm from Texas, and I was in prison in Texas, so I didn't know how big Texas got some country areas, all country. Now, of course, here's what I found out. All the major metropolitan areas in Texas are Democrats, except Fort Worth, right? But all the rest of them is Democrats. But everything outside of the country, all Republican. Guess how? Voter suppression is still here. No, it's not true. It's still white racist people are still here in the South, stopping, lying, spreading propaganda, doing everything in their power to hold a grip on political power. It's real. It's always been real. This has been bred to white supremacy through white family, through white heritage. This is what the Southern pride is all about. But it's a closed door secret. But to us black people, we also Contrary the whole on man, you better not mess with you white folks. It's people right now in East Texas, right? Because I didn't know about the Slocum Massacre that happened in East Texas, which is about 35 miles a yonder way, not too far from Dallas. They had a massacre, 1910, right? I didn't know this, but I did run across a black person who told me, Mayhem, behind every closed door, black people are afraid of white people. And I said to myself, this man said this with his soul, but he grew up in Palestine, Texas, by Slocum. As a child, I can only imagine what he was taught. But I can imagine how he feels when white people say something to him. See, and this is I didn't believe that these people, black people, existed today. They do. And he exists because that's how he was raised in the environment. So if we are the enlightened people, we have to go down to these people and show them we are powerful people. And you are powerful because you are connected to me. And if these white people down here in this little country town think they're gonna do something, but we have to be humble too, because these little towns are deep with white people. And these white people are not afraid to use violence, and they have shown us this over the last 100 years. These white people, these Trump people, are not afraid because they got the excuse of saying that I have mental issues. I have mental health issues. I can go shoot a group of black people and get away with it. I got mental health issues.
I think that when it comes to the black people of fear, it was the generation that lived through the 60s civil rights actions, and they were the ones beaten with batons, shot at, lynched, all of that. And so their fear is valid. We didn't live through that.
Right.
And we live in a world where, to an extent, they're held accountable. It's hard to say it's a hate crime, but they do have it out there. In fact, the individual, the one that shot and murdered 9 of us in Buffalo, he's faced with hate crime charges. So I think that's a generational difference. And that's something that we do have to work on. And in fact, the individuals here that were telling me they won't vote, it's them. That generation that feels that they don't have any value.
I'm confident with these guys because, like I say, with education becomes responsibility, right? With education, you become accountable, right? When you don't know any better, then you don't even know what am I holding accountable? Why should I vote? Why should I do it? I didn't know that I vote because I care about my family. I vote because I care about my community. I vote because I care about my community, right? I vote because I care about the people who died for me because they realized voting was important. A lot of people died for me to vote, right? And if I don't vote, then I'm really being disrespectful on the cool. But then again, I'm also not being responsible for my own duties. This is like a responsible being an adult. This is almost like brushing your teeth is supposed to be correlation with voting because you were saying, well, my vote and I vote. But again, a lot of us, we don't vote. And because again, we've been conditioned to think that our vote doesn't count. We've heard this numerous times. I'm sure you've heard it. I've heard it numerous times. I'm 45. You feel me? Your vote don't count. Especially when I tell people to vote. So and you encourage somebody to vote, they'll shoot back at you. So it's almost like as much as you try to encourage people to vote, they're going to encourage you not to vote. So it's almost like it's a matter of time before one of us stop voting. He's already made his mind up. So what I try to do is get kids to understand from the beginning, you're an American citizen. You belong to this as much as you would, whatever. Before you black anything, you're going to pay taxes, right? So you pay taxes to a government. This government is ran by the Democrat. This is a Republican democracy, right? This is we vote. So you're a participant. I want you to be a productive citizen, not a productive black man, white man, a citizen. That means you got to vote. You got to participate in the government. For us to have a good government or any control, we got to participate. Whether we serve as a government, a police officer, or we vote. Either or, you got to do something because you're paying taxes to it anyway. You're gonna live here. You don't want to go anywhere. You're not moving it out. You know what I'm saying? So why not vote? Even if you don't want to vote for yourself, vote for your mother, vote for your kids, vote for your sister, vote for your brother, vote for your dad. Do it for them and do it for the people who died. Do it for your grandparents who died because believe me, if you don't know, people were lynched, burned, bit to death, water drowned behind this simple vote. That's free.
Correct. That's why I said I think every 18-year-old should have to sit down before they give in their right to vote. Watch Ava DuVernay's Selma, and you'll see what happened. And then, secondly, yes, you watch Selma, and then they'll see what happened. Another point that I did want to make is in correlation again. Wilmington, January 6th, voting. If they understand the power of our vote, how come we don't?
Because
I don't get that. It's a matter of going, registering. I'm a registrar. If you are in Dallas County, I will come to you. And then we fill out the little card, turn it in, and then you go the day of. You have early voting for a full week. You don't have to stand in line if you catch it at the right time. Then you have the day of. Do not wait till the day of to go vote if you can, if you really don't have to, because then you most likely will have to stand in line. Go in. They're going to give you, you tell them which party you support. They're going to give you the ballot, and you vote. That's it. Make sure it went through and turn that card back in so your vote gets counted. It's a simple task. Again, too many ancestors died for this. Now, and one thing, Wilmington, it was really one of the key issues was because Wilmington was, as you said, 56% Black. So you had Black people in government. You had Black judges, you had Black lawyers, you had Black teachers, you had Black Congress folks, Black council people. We were in
Black treasurer, Black law enforcement.
And so these the redcoats didn't like that.
Now, these redcoats, let me say the leaders of the redcoats were the governor, went on to become the governor of North Carolina. The leaders of these redcoats were governors, senators, judges, and preachers. These were the leaders of the group.
Now, we have seen it where the comparison is made that many times we go for jobs and things of that nature, go before judges. These are the people you let get in because you didn't vote. Undercover redcoats, undercover Klansmen, undercover white supremacists. And some are fairly bold with it.
Yeah. What's the name? This guy named Benjamin Tillman. Benjamin Tillman was a leader in the Wilmington riot. He was also the governor. His picture hangs in the mansion. He hung, killed Black people, and became the governor. And the United States knew about it, and they didn't do nothing about it because they said, well, Black people are not going to vote. Because not only Black people had, when Black people got the right to vote in 1870, right? Because we got to realize, I'll be taking for granted everybody know history, but I want to make sure people don't. Black men did not get the right to vote until 1870. That means legally vote. It happened in 1865 after the Civil War, but we're talking about it has to be ratified and all the way in government. First Black people ever vote came in 1870, not 1865, right? So from 1870, so you got to realize the first 10 years after we had the right to vote, this is when you had the mass attack, voter suppression on Black people and the right to vote. White supremacists said Black people had no right to vote. They were illegitimate votes, and therefore they did not count. So the biggest attack on Wilmington, they said this was voter fraud. Voter fraud. Black people, they saying that Black people vote did not count. In Wilmington, North Carolina, the Dixie Democrats stuffed so many ballots in the box that they had more cast than there were registered voters. Straight up, and they still, they trumped it out. That's all I'm gonna say. Trump is the only thing I can compare it to, because this man will do everything and people will, I don't see it. Because he got money, I don't get it. But I said all that to say this here. I studied philosophy, and I studied philosophy because Alexander the Great was taught by Aristotle. Aristotle was taught by Plato. Plato was taught by Socrates. Socrates is a guy who created Western philosophy. Western philosophy is what we live on today, which means those who, the majority of people rule. We don't have a king or a tyrant. We don't have somebody who can dictate what we do. This is where the people rule. This came from Socrates. This whole notion, the way American lives their life today, was a philosophy that came out or is credited to Socrates. But one thing that I remember, the most important thing that I remember that Socrates said about democracy is this: it cannot work if people do not participate. A democracy cannot work if people do not participate in it. And right now, I see people don't participate in it.
That's correct.
We just receive. We want somebody else to participate, and we're just going to be the recipients. So I tell anybody, if you're already in the democracy, and if you really want it to work, you got to participate. You got to vote.
All right. So we will go ahead. We're going to wrap this up. But the key things, I think the most key correlation between the Wilmington Massacre of 1898 and the January 6th storm on the Capitol is voting rights. And again, I don't get, if you see they're fighting us like this on these, why don't we understand the value and exercise that right? So I want y'all to go out and get Black Massacres. This is Mayhem's book. It is very good. Details each massacre thoroughly and understandably. Again, here in Dallas, the superintendent is retiring, and he has said that there is a literacy gap for our Black children. Have them read about it, at least one chapter a day. That would help a lot with the literacy gap. And there are other books out there as well. If you need recommendations for books, let me know. We also have a math book written by myself and some other sisters as well. That's something that helps our children understand English and math are intertwined. But I want you to know, first of all, Mayhem, thank you. Thank you for taking the time to educate us thoroughly on this information and the depth of it in the fabric of this country that we live in. Putting us in a position to hopefully value a right that many of our ancestors died for, and to exercise that right. If nothing else, go vote to make them mad. Just vote. And please don't be taken in by the propaganda, specifically from Trump. You see the mess that's going on right now with Herschel Walker, a stand-up man that apparently had a whole bunch of kids outside of his marriage he didn't take care of.
I don't know. Whoa. Herschel Walker is a stand-up football player, but as far as a man is concerned, Herschel Walker has had a couple nervous breakdowns. He's had a lot of psychological problems way before he ran for politics. It's crazy. And Herschel Walker is another example of the coonery. He should never be a politician. He's not even stable for himself. This man has been in and out of psychiatry. He's had a lot. And then what he says, if you listen to what he said, how he talks, if you listen to Herschel Walker, so again, stop looking for a star to lead you. Stop looking for a famous person. Listen for the truth. Listen for wisdom. Listen for intelligence, because there's no way you're going to listen to a Herschel Walker and say, yeah, he's not cuckoo. These guys are cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. And if you don't know about them, read about them before they become presidents. There's a lot of information about Herschel Walker out there. Concussions. This man is he's fumbled a football several times off the field. You know what I'm saying? And out of all the football players, we want Herschel Walker in here? No, man, come on. He's not stable. He's not. We got so many mentally unstable people trying to be a politician.
And not that we have anything against mental illness. It's a reality, and we know that it's a part of life for some of us. But there are some places where the illness has progressed to a manner that person, it compromises that person's ability to perform in that particular position. And I do agree with you. Herschel Walker does not need to be in that position because of his beliefs as well. He promotes white supremacy himself, and yet he's Black. So yes, he's the last person. So Georgia, you need to come on out. You need to put Stacey Abrams in office as your governor, and Senator Raphael Warnock, we need to vote to get him to stay. Dallas got a whole lot of work to do.
Can I say something about mental health one time? Because this is something that kills me sometimes. I was in prison, and I thought, I seen everybody else using mental health as an excuse. So I thought, let me go out here and see if I can get some mental health help, right? Because they got help for people who got, even in prison. Mm-hmm. I went down to this mental health place, and I sat in front of this psychiatrist, and I tried to spin all the craziness. I just told this woman all my story about how terrible my life was and all the crazy things I've done. I know I did some crazy things. This woman looked me right in my face and told me the best news I ever heard of my life. She said, sir, you don't have a psychological problem. You have a behavioral problem. And I'm saying that to say this here. If you're black, you don't get the luxury to say that you have mental health issues. You have a behavior problem. And everybody that's out here talking about, oh, it's mental health. No, these people have a behavior problem and they need to be punished. You feel me? This is a lie. And again, mental health only comes out when this is a blanket for white people. This is not for black people. Black people have never got the courtesy or the instant. Maybe he got mental health. Because if this was the case, I should have never went to prison. I had mental health. Anybody can claim mental health issues. It's a bullshit excuse for committing a crime. If you go out here, you do not have a psychological problem. You have a behavior problem. You just don't want to do right. That lady told me this. That lady told me, she say, sir, you don't have a psychological problem. You have a behavior problem. And when she told me that, I said, you know what, you're right. And I changed my behavior problem, and I stayed out of trouble. And I made a tremendous turnaround because I stopped looking for an excuse to say, I got a problem with me. That woman said, ain't no problem with you. I said, ain't no problem with me? Nope. I said, for real? Yeah. I said, all right then. And I took off intelligently. I got 3 degrees too. I got a degree in horticulture, computer science, and a degree in business from Baylor University. You know what I'm saying? And I'm a special ed student. So I'm telling people, when you clear your mind, you can become one of a kind. You can get straight. And I'll tell people, stop looking for a reason why you're doing something and just stand on what you believe in, because at the end of the day, there is no really such thing as mental health issue. You have a behavior problem. You guys just don't want to do right. And I'm speaking and I've done all the crazy stuff. You know, I'm saying I did what he did. Now, do I have mental health issues? No. Okay. But what make me different from him? Nothing. He black and I'm white. That's it. Because anybody who go out there and intentionally kill somebody, I think that should be a mental health issue.
And I agree with you in that context there. Now,
Right.
do I believe that some people have mental issues and there's a genuine disconnect, an imbalance? Yes. But when it comes to things like this, racism, killing people because they are different than you, now I'm with you. That's a behavioral.
That's you got a behavior.
Behavior.
From my understanding, they say mental health patients are not violent at all. This is what they say. So all these people who commit violent acts, you don't even get the excuse. And we as black people have never got that excuse. Let me say this. In prison, I've worked in SEG in prison. And in prison, I've had numerous psychiatrists come crying to me talking about that inmate don't need to be in jail. He got a problem. He got a problem. I said, he in there. He in there. You feel me? He's in there and they tried him as a criminal and they don't see no mental health. But you see all the mental health issues. But what can we do? But he's black. We don't get that liberty from what I've saw. And I've been in prison for 17 calendar years. I've saw black people in SEG, you know, there really wasn't all there, but still, we don't get the luxury to say that we have a mental health issue where they even care about, where they say, well, we're going to get him some help. The help for us is jail, is prison. So why can't it be for them? I don't get that. You know what I'm saying? But again, I don't like to see people using this excuse and it's a mental health issue. No, it's a behavioral problem and it's a white supremacy. It's evil. People need to be held accountable and condemned for what they're doing. And they don't need to be justified. And we don't need to be trying to build money and build money for health issues. And they're just, you know, it's just a brush. It's smoke screen to say, well, it's not really racism. No, it's racism. It's not a mental health issue. It's you teaching your son bull heritage of white supremacy that would encourage him or give him the audacity to go do what he's doing.
And one thing, and we talk about that now. I'm glad you made that comparison, or that you tried to go out there and try to use that excuse yourself. It didn't fly. And here's what I want people to understand. Like I said, I met you with another group of men that have all had the similar experience of being incarcerated. You all are some of the most intelligent men I have ever met. I told one the other day, I said I would probably think twice about taking an IQ test against him because he's that smart. And this same one, my friend and I, we are planning to do a mother-son dance here in Dixon Circle where we will have mothers and sons. It's going to be an etiquette event. I had one of the individuals that was involved in that event been formerly incarcerated. He was in my home for doing some help. I'm helping him do something else. And he looked at a picture I have on the wall of a African woman with her child. And he said, while the picture was beautiful, he took it to the next level. He was like, but basically, is it glorifying a fatherless household? And so when she comes to me and you said, we're going to do this mother son dance, I go back to what he said. Are we glorifying the fatherless household? So we have changed some things that we're going to do in this event to bring in the male presence, the male teaching, and so forth, to embolden the maleness of our Black boys. So yeah, you don't have a mental issue. I'm with her on that, because y'all are some of the smartest men I have ever met.
And the reason why you're seeing this, the reason why you're saying and you see this is because we are also some of the men that you probably seen that also did the most reading. People be, I ran across some other day, he told me he probably read more books than I did. And I'm like, man, I used to attack encyclopedias. And I just didn't read this. I read encyclopedias and I read documentaries. I was at a point where I didn't even read any fictional books. If it wasn't nonfiction, if it wasn't spiritual, educational, or motivational, I didn't read it. But I read everything I got in my hand. I was almost addicted to reading. So, but I read for 17 years, and I was reading to educate and enlighten myself and better myself. And just like every person you've talking to, and that's why all of us are kind of, because people see me and they say, "Oh man, you sound, you're rare." And I'm like, no, it's a lot of us. You just don't get to see us. But there are many. I am a product of the people who I came from up under. You know what I'm saying? Who I got to salute my hand. If it wasn't for no ex-convict dude telling me, because I'm a special ed student. If it wasn't for no convict telling me, hey man, if you had some education, you'd be a pretty bad dude. You be bad. He was telling me that education would add value to me, basically. But it took him to tell me that, because all the doctors and teachers and preachers and everybody else who told me, that went in one ear and out the other. But when he told me, it meant something. So I tried to educate myself and accidentally went on and got 3 college degrees. But and again, I don't even think I needed the college degrees. All of us are smart with no college degree. You don't need a degree to be smart. Educate. Reading will help you so much. And again, I didn't learn to read till I was 22. And it's sad to say that, but I can say it. I can say it now because I graduated college. You feel me? So I don't mind telling people, hey man, I've been there before. I was in prison for 4 years before I really got being able to read good. I read a lot of novels and fantasy stories, but those books helped me become a better reader. So I'm not going to sit here and talk about those books and say, don't read a fictional book. You know what I'm saying? Reading is it's the only way you can get better is reading. But once you get so good reading, you need to read stuff that's going to add value to you instead of take away from you. But I'm not going to tell you don't read. I'm going to tell you read whatever you can read, because the more you read, the more better you'll become. Reading is fundamental, but your reading will take you to a whole place. If I didn't never read, I would have never knew who I was or what reality was and what I was supposed to do and what we're supposed to do. See, and all these things are correlated to one. And once I became the man I wanted to, once I became educated, I scared everybody because I was intelligent and I knew constitutional and criminal law. That's what these white people really don't want you to know. Right? They don't want us to know criminal law, and they don't want us to know civil law, because if we know civil law, then we can stop them from violating any civil rights, and we can make true change without even being a politician. But that's another story.
That is, and that's right now why I'm in paralegal classes at a school here in Texas, because they're getting us on that. But you see the name of the book scrolling across the bottom, by Maham the Mentor, Black Massacre, is available on Amazon
or Barnes and Nobles. All platforms. You can find it everywhere.
All right. This is a valuable, worthwhile read for yourself and your students. And it is nonfiction. Your children and whoever's reading it will be learning factual information. We want to protect our narrative and make sure it's told correctly. And this is an excellent tool to get that done. Maham, again, thank you so much for coming on board, sir. It has been an absolute pleasure. So much knowledge. We will do this again, because I'm sure something else is going to happen that's going to be able to be correlated. So again, thank you all for coming. This video will be available here on the live, and it will be uploaded to YouTube, and it will be distributed in a link as well. So thank you all for watching with us today. Maham, thank you again. You all have a wonderful, safe weekend.